All right, part 2 for Unit 5, Topic 4. We're going to be looking at histograms. So what we just talked about in the last part was, or were the frequency distribution or frequency tables, relative frequency, and cumulative frequency. Now those are tables in a way to display data. Now we're going to look at histograms, which is more of a graphical way to display data. A graph representing frequency data using bars of different heights is a histogram. There is no spacing between each bar. The horizontal axis is labeled with the data, and the vertical axis specifies the frequency, either relative or cumulative or just the plain frequency. So let's look at an example. Now full disclosure, my drawing is not the best. Typically I would do something like this in Excel or another software tool to draw it because my drawing is terrible, but it's really important for you guys all to know how to do this. So what you do is you start, sorry, my pen keeps going up. All right, here we've got the table. So we have number of books read. So that's gonna go on this side. I'm just gonna write number books. Books. Okay, so we have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So we're gonna 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. We'll see how this goes. All right, so the first one we have 11. So let's say that we just label this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So for 2 books, we're going to draw a bar. That's for our 2. Then for 3, we have about 10, or not about 10, we have 10. 4, we have 16. Oy, sheesh, I did not leave enough room. So we're going to go ahead and write, that's what you should check the range before you draw your little picture. I'm a little limited here on my iPad. 14, 15, 16. All right, so we're going to have 4 is going to go all the way up here. I know it's in the middle of the other frequency table. Sorry about that. 16 though, so then for 5, we only have 6. Notice I'm drawing this, the way it goes is you're drawing the bar all the way up to the number that shows up in the frequency table, and there's no space. You know, you'll see some charts, I'm just going to show you an example like this. That is not a histogram. They should not have any space between. They should be right next to each other. All right, for 6 books we have, the frequency is 5, and then for 7 books the frequency is 2. All right, so that was how you go from a frequency table to a histogram. All right. That's pretty simple. And really quick, I want to talk about how to use the histogram to answer the following, how to use it, like how to read a histogram. So let's look, let me see if I can make this a little easier to read while there we go. Okay, so here's the questions down below, and then we're going to reference this histogram at the top. So here it looks like we have number of hours spent playing video games on the weekends, and then the number of students is the frequency. So how many students spent fewer than 10 hours playing video games? So if we look here, that's 10, and to that way is 10. So we're going to add up the frequency here. We have 2 and 3. So that means that the frequency, or how many students spent fewer than 10 hours, is going to be 5, because we have that 2 plus 3. All right, what range of hours had the lowest frequency? Well, that's going to go to the lowest bar, which is right here. So that's 0 to 5. So we would write 0 to 5. So that's kind of how you read the table. You can go through and reference, and that's how you go from a frequency table to a histogram, and then how you can answer some questions using the histogram. All right, let's go back to this one just to read this a little bit easier. All right. Identifying shapes of histograms. Again, this is actually something very critical in statistics. We have different types of distributions, and what we mean by that is the shape of the histogram. So histograms can be characterized by their shape, symmetry, and skewness. There are 4 shapes. A uniform histogram has all its bars the same height. When a histogram has 1 peak, this is called unimodal. If there are 2 peaks, it's bimodal. Any histogram with more than 1 peak is multimodal. So bimodal would be a type of multimodal. Well, or maybe that, if I could say it. If a vertical line can be drawn through the middle of the histogram and the 2 halves are mirroring each other, the histogram is called symmetric. This is actually a really important concept that you will get to, that you'll, if you keep going within this, it's going to talk about central limit theorem. So has anyone heard of that thing called the bell curve or anything like that? That's usually when they talk about that, that's called talking about the normal distribution. That is not something we're talking about right now. I just wanted to make sure that it's clear because it isn't a very important thing in statistics. All right, so let's go through some examples. Determine the shape of the given histograms. So, all right, so remember we have symmetric, uniform, unimodal, bimodal, or multimodal. In this case, let's draw a line to check for symmetry. Well, this side is not the same as this side, so it's not symmetric. It's not uniform. Uniform would mean if all the bars were basically the same height, which they clearly are not, so it is not uniform. Now it does have one peak, and up here, remember, one peak meant that it's unimodal. So that would mean this one is unimodal. Oh, and one thing I was going to address in this also that we just missed, and I'm sorry about that, I missed this underneath, is talking about skew. A left skewed histogram has a left tail and a right skewed has a right tail. In this case, when we say tail, we're talking about the lower part. So see how this peak is here on the right and there's a smaller part over here? This would be considered a tail. So in this case, we would say that this is left skewed. Now, that's not the type of distribution or the shape of the histogram. That is the skew of the histogram. So it's important to note that, okay? I'm just adding that in here because it's something that's also part of the discussion. But when they ask for the shape of it, they're asking for unimodal. All right, so this one, we can draw a line down the middle, and it is pretty much the same. That means this is symmetric. All right. All right, and this last one, or not last one, we have two, I guess. Here we have all in a straight line. That is what we call uniform. Now, sometimes you'll see them a slight variation, but if the basic shape is that they're all the same, then that's a uniform distribution. All right, so here we have, let's see, let's draw a line down the middle. Well, it's not exactly symmetric. This side's a little bit higher than this side, but we do have two peaks. So we can say that this is bimodal. All right. So that's the basics of histograms. Like I said, they're a great way to show data, and you can get a really good idea of where the bulk of the data is, where the higher frequencies are by looking at histograms. So if you have any questions about the frequency tables, the relative frequency, cumulative frequency, or histograms, let me know.